What's going on, you guys? Welcome back. Last video we were working on Frankenstein here, and that's what we're going to be doing again today. We are working on it some more. Last video we actually got our fuel cell, which is right here. For those of you guys that hadn't seen the last video, got that cut, mocked up. We got it and pretty much fitted into place. Went ahead and rigged up our just kind of a really quick fuel system on it. Got this thing fired up. Got to hear it run for longer than a second. I believe the thing actually sounds really cool coming through that header. Since then, gone ahead and bolted the turbo up into place. Now I'm still waiting on a feed line. I actually ordered that. That should be here shortly. Gone ahead and installed, as you can see back there, the fittings for our drain system. So I've got a hose there. I'll be making a hose to go from there to there to complete the drain for it. I've also got some pieces off the old exhaust system from Daisy there that I will be cutting up and installing. Kind of give ourselves a short little turn up exhaust. I know it's a little big, but I think it looks really cool. Like I said, I'm not really 100% concerned with the it's probably not going to make a whole bunch of boost on that turbo since it is so big for that engine. This is only a 600cc for those of you guys that are just joining. So but definitely fun and awesome to look at. Definitely looks really cool. So that's what I'm going to do right now. We're going to get ourselves, keep getting lost. Another thing we are doing is I'm cutting up some metal there to install and make a brace for our Gsxr600 seat, which was given to me by a buddy of mine. Thank you, Matt. So we're getting those pieces cut up, get those tack welded in place so we can get the seat installed. And I'm also going to be installing a different rack and pinion. The original one I had was this little guy right here, and this is made of plastic, so the splines here are supported by this little plastic cover. I felt that was not going to be strong enough. This one's all aluminum. Definitely going to be beefier, but just kind of trying to take care of some odds and ends on this thing. I've been putting on what I've got, trying to mock up what I can. That way we can get this thing closer and closer to getting it fired back up, letting it run, function test, brakes, shifting, all that stuff. Maybe get a quick little test ride in, just around. That's definitely in a future video though. Got a lot of work left to do, but just trying to figure out the parts list that I need so we can get to that point. And so, yeah. Let me show you what I'm doing. So this stuff here is 1.5 by inch and 1/4 by 1.25 square tubing. As you can see, I've already cut it to come up and back. Now this thing, nothing's level. I just got things leaning against it and stuff. So, and that's not exactly sitting where I want it, but it is pretty close. And I'm going to show you guys basically how I got those measurements, or to get the angle I want. I of course sat in the seat first to kind of feel like where I want the lean to be, and I felt really comfortable with that right there. Said this buggy is really only going to be built for me later in life. If I want to put a slider on it, I will, but this whole thing's really been built around me. So we're basically where I bolt the seat down is where it's going to be. But anyways, I've got 3 types of tools here you can use to find your angles. You got to remember the bottom's always 0 on any one of these things. 0 is 0. This guy here I picked up from Lowe's. I think it was like 20 bucks. Then we have our digital angle finder. That's Harbor Freight. I think it's also between $20 and $30. Then these you can pick up pretty much at any tool store, lumber store, whatever, for between, I've seen them go from $1 to like $4. So this one's a cheap plastic one. As you can see, I got pieces missing, busted off. This thing gets well used because I do a lot of cutting on smaller pieces of metal. But anyways, here's what we got. So we take here's this guy right here. There's 0. You can see it's a little past 0. It's because I got it jacked up. It's kind of holding the suspension a little bit, but now, and then you can see the angle here. You can take this, come up and follow the edge of the seat, and if you read in there, you can see it's roughly 28 degrees is where that is from 0. Now we'll come over to our little digital one. Turn that little guy on. Set him down. So you can see 1 degree right there. Which is about right. I believe that's what the other one was reading. Come over here to your seat. We'll hold it close there. Make sure it's nice and flat. And then you can see right there, it says 28 degrees. Now, if you don't have that the angle one or the digital one, and all you have laying around is this, I'll show you how to use this. Some of you guys probably do already know, but you know, some guys only use this for just straight edges. But it does have little angles down there, as you can see. This being the tip here being 0. So now I'm going to show you how to get your angle from that. So you can see the angle of the seat. Now this is the bottom of our frame rail. Remember that that point is our 0 line. Basically just come there, line it up nice and flush. Now it hits our edge of our seat. Now you can take it and just rotate it all the way back till it's flush with the edge of our seat. Make sure that that is flush and up against the edge of our frame rail. And if you come all the way down here, you'll read the lines. 25, 26, 27. See if I can get a better angle there. 27 degrees. Which is what I got with it on the ground. It's reading 1 degree because I got the back end on the floor jack. So, neat thing about this is regardless of where you got the thing picked up or positioned on a floor jack stand, or if your ground is level, you're going to get your degrees off the metal regardless of what angle you have it at, the angle you're finding. So you can see that bottom of the frame rail, I could have that jacked up another 4 inches. As long as I keep the bottom of this guy on there, run it up against the edge of our seat, because that's the angle we need to find. Make sure that that's planted, level. Come down here, there's 25, 26, oh, there it goes, 27. So I hope that helps out. Like, you don't need big fancy tools. Sometimes the easiest or the most accurate ones are going to be the cheapest. They don't really lie. This guy and that guy are going to follow the angle of the floor. So if you're trying to find the angle of the seat and the buggy's not level, or whatever it is you're working on is not level, it's going to have that measurement in on their gauges, on their face. That's what it's going to tell you. This guy, like I said, you can have the buggy standing straight up and down. If you're trying to find the angle between the back of the seat and the bottom of the frame rail, this is going to tell you the same thing regardless. So, but anyways, as you can see there, I already got 2 pieces cut out and mocked into place. I'm going to go ahead and get the other side measured out, cut up, get those tack welded into place. So I'll be right back. bars are mounted, and we got our seat here mounted up into place. I got 2 bolts up front to kind of help position it for me. I still got to make a bar going from here to there for our shoulder belts. I got to make the bottom bar here for the lap part, and a bar and a standoff going for the front. That way we got a spot to securely mount our 5-point harness. I definitely want to have that in this buggy. I hope going over the different tools to help measure help some of you guys out. I know a lot of you probably already know, but some may not. And anything I can do to help share some of the knowledge, regardless of what you're using, it's always worth having this guy in your toolbox, because not only can it help you find angles, it'll help you transfer them as well. Especially if you guys are using something like this, where the angles are split up in 15-degree increments. Finding 27, 26 degrees on that thing can be a little challenging at times. So I hope it helps. Anyways, now that we've got the seat all mocked up, what I think I'm going to do now is I'm going to come over here to the other side, because I have cut up, like I said, a couple pieces of the old exhaust off the Mustang. So I've already got this piece kind of V-banded into place there. I'm going to take a couple measurements because I want to mock up and have that guy coming off. Now I am going to shorten it about probably another 3 or 4 inches to bring it in a little closer. It looks a little silly being that long. And after I get that mocked up there, I'll get it tack welded into place. I'm going to try out our little dual flow regulator there on the bottle. See if I can purge that while I'm welding it up, just to see how much better that acts. So yeah, I'm actually kind of excited to do that. You know, that is 3-inch. Probably going to be a little big for this, but that is okay. I know I keep mentioning everything on this buggy is just, I got a bunch of parts here that I have left over. A bunch of it, and regardless of that, it has helped me improve my welding skills. All the practice I can get, the better. So let's get that piece cut, get it mocked up, and get it welded into place. And it's welded up. So first impression of purging it, it's actually much better. The way the weld acts is different, and I really don't know how to quite explain, except that it welded differently. It welded nicer, like the argon coming from the inside to the outside. So not only was it getting argon from the top side, of course getting argon from the bottom side, and then kind of coming around the little gap where I was welding. But I'll show you what it looks like. So, get the focus. So, there's what we got. Some of you might remember my first attempts at TIG welding was not great, but as you can see with practice, I am getting better. Just got to work on my hand steadiness a little bit. Now, let's get inside here, see if I can turn on the, oh, there we go. So, here's some of my earlier ones. Turn that around. You can see where it would sugar a little bit, kind of pokes up there, and then the welds on the back side, you can see there is no sugaring, except for where I tack welded it while it was still on the buggy. There you go. There's some more right there, but you get in there on the inside, my finger out of the way. It looks a lot better. All around, much better weld. So, a lot happier with it. And all I used was some the V-band clamp, some tin foil on one end, and tin foil on the other with a hose clamp. Just poked a little hole in it. Eventually I'll step all that stuff up, but I don't do it as much to justify buying plugs, and that actually seems to work out real well. So I'll go ahead and get this exhaust bolted up to the buggy, and then I'll start working on the drain. So see you guys here in a second. And our exhaust is on. I think it looks pretty good. Might be a little ridiculous for this engine. This is actually 3.5. Like I said, it's the old stuff off the car, but I'm using what I got here, spare parts, extra parts, little things. Just have fun and learn with, so that's what she looks like. Now, we're going to get on the drain. As you can see, I already have one end hooked up to the bottom of the turbo. The fitting's already made up, and I have it lined up with the fitting on the case. I'm actually going to give the camera to my wife. Where is she? There she is. She's going to do some recording for me. Say hi, Ashley. Hi. She's going to do some recording for me. Kind of want to go over how to make these lines for some of you guys that don't know how to do it. Some of you definitely or probably already know how, but if you're new and you're watching this, like I said before, just to see what I'm doing to this thing, and it's another reason why I started this channel. If I can help spread any kind of knowledge whatsoever, that's what I want to do. So we're going to go over how to make these lines real quick, and so I'm going to pass the camera off to my wife. There you go. All right, so if you want to come on over here, as you can see, like I already said, it is attached to the bottom of the turbo. You don't have to get in there right now. I already showed it. Now these things come rolled up in a box. Most lines do. This is a cheaper line, so the more expensive line may not do this. But because I buy the cheaper stuff and they come, it's like I'll buy 20 feet and it'll come in a box and it'll be rolled up really, really tight. When I undo it, I try to find the natural curve or how it's already laid out. It's what it wants to do naturally. And that's because it, on the inside, I like to use the nylon hose, but on the inside still has stainless steel braided inside the rubber line itself. And when it comes curled up, all those lines will kind of form in how they're rolled, especially if they've been left on the shelf for a while. So I like to try to find the natural curve or how it is basically relaxed. But anyways, what I do is I'll get one end made up how I want it, get it the one end snug so it doesn't move around on you, find where it wants to go, turn it if need be. Now you'll see right here, the way these lines come, you'll have the fitting itself and kind of like the jam nut or what the hose goes into. Basically just run that all the way down till it stops, find the line, and I like to use masking tape. For one, you can get masking tape really tight and it doesn't stick as much as like electrical tape or duct tape will, so after you're done cutting the line, it won't want to pull the nylon up. Like I said, get it as tight as you can. It helps after, with the cutting process as well. So 2 or 3 wraps is usually pretty good. Once you got it wrapped, find your marker. Now come to where it splits, like I said there. Draw your line directly in line with that split. Inside these, you'll see there's a little wall. So you can see that big old wall that's in there. It's roughly 1/4 inch. So when you cut your line, oops, go ahead and mark yourself up about 1/8 to 1/4, because if you don't, it'll be tight. That way you know where that wall is inside there, and then when you go to put the line back on, everything should fit exactly the way you have it. So let's get this line off. Go ahead and get this fitting off as well. Come on over to our chop saw. Now you don't have to use a chop saw, you can use a cut-off wheel as well. And I like to use the grinding wheel or the cutting wheels and go fast. Line it up where you want it. I said here, once you get it cut, if you peel the tape off, it doesn't want to pull up all your nylon, and the heat from the cutoff wheel will generally melt most of the ends, so you won't have a bunch of frayed ends, which makes it easier to put inside your fitting. Now another thing, you can use brake parts cleaner. I like to use brake parts cleaner because it doesn't leave a residue. Rinse it out real good. You don't want any of those rubber or any of that rubber dust in there. Once you're sure you've got it blowing out real well, you go ahead and use an air hose. Make sure to blow it out really well. All right, once you got it all blown out, go ahead and come on over to your vise. I've got one of these bench mounted vices over here. First things first, I use the cheaper fittings, so the more expensive ones will probably have a little bit more of a lip there, and this which will help guide the hose inside. If you're like me and buy the cheaper ones, you're gonna use a little pick. So I'll get one part of it started, push as much in with my finger as I possibly can. Take your time a little bit. Be careful of the little stainless wires that are in there. And once you got most of it in, then you can come against something like your bench and just go across the top, kind of push and work your way in. Like I said, the more expensive fittings probably have a nicer edge in there, a little more of a taper to help aid in this process. So you don't have to use a whole lot of pressure. Once you get it started, and you'll know because it'll start sliding in really easy. And then your little nylon won't be all bunched up. So once you get it started, another thing to remember too is it's got, this hose has to rest, come all the way up to this lip in there, and that is turn it left, and there's a reason for that. So once you get it turn it to the left, like you would be taking a normal bolt off, and you'll see the hose, if you look in there, start climbing up the fitting, and it's going to stop up against the bottom of the threads. So we are almost there, and we are there. Now the reason for that, because you turn it this way to tighten it up to the left. When you go to put this fitting in and tighten it, it's going to take this hose and turn it to the left. And if for any reason the fitting grabs a hold of the hose, it doesn't turn the hose out as you're trying to tighten the fitting up. It'll actually help keep it pulled tight against this lip here. So now once you got that hose all the way up against the lip, I'll put it in the vise. Now you may or may not have another type of tool, but I have just this vise here. They sell aluminum jaws for these so you don't damage your fittings. So you can see I don't have one. I like to use just masking tape. It's cheap. I can peel it off later if it gets damaged. Another thing too is because this is aluminum, and if it gets tight, the threads will gold. So if you're using it for, like this is going to be the oil return, this is the oil that's in the bike, I'll use it. Just put a little dab on the tapered part of it and let it run down the threads. That helps lubricate, and it will not contaminate the line. So just put her in there. Go by hand at first, make sure it turns. You're going to use a little slight pressure downwards. Once you know for sure that you've got it started, then go ahead and grab, you can use a regular crescent wrench or whatever. If you put tape on it, it won't it won't scratch or scar the fittings. I recently picked up this little guy, probably maybe a couple weeks ago. I'll put a link to this in the description so you guys can get it. It's really cheap, actually. I think it's like 18 bucks. And then just just tighten it up like you normally would. As you can see, this direction is going to the right to tighten. We put the hose into the left, so if it was going to grab it, it would turn this hose to the left. So it isn't grabbing the hose, it's actually tightening up really nice. And I'll just keep tightening little by little, just paying attention to where I'm at. Like right there's tight. Now if you've got OCD, you can go back just a little bit to line up all these edges so it looks nice and uniform. And that will be okay. If you don't care, then go ahead and tighten it up, but that's really only an 1/8 of a turn. As you can see, there is our hose. Neat thing about these is they are pinned. These all swivel. Both these ends will swivel. There's an O-ring in there to help you line it up, which is another reason why I say just find the relaxed part of the hose. You can get all this stuff to line up later. Let's go put it on the buggy. Go ahead and let you come on by there. So we'll go ahead and start it on the bottom of the turbo. Turn it to where I need it. Now I don't have, so as you can see, there's the natural part. Boom. Just gotta, oh, I got that fitting wrong. There it goes. Boom. So you can see there, it is pretty much lined up. I didn't have to pull on it. Didn't have to stretch it. All I had to do was find how I had it mocked up, find the natural curve of the hose, get everything started by hand first, that way you know it fits like it should. Even though these are cheap fittings, they still seal up against themselves really well. So all you gotta do is get it on there snug. There you have it. There is our return line made for our buggy. The only thing I'm waiting on now is the feed line going to the top of the turbo. But yeah, that's where we're at. So next thing's last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get myself set up here real quick for the steering rack and just kind of go over how I would set that up as well. So I'll be back here in a second. And I'm back. All right, so let me show you what I got going on. Here is our old steering rack that I had. Let me get this out of here. Like I said before, we changed it up because this piece is plastic and I felt it would not be strong enough to hold in case the wheel got jerked. The one we have in there now is all aluminum cast. Now, because this one, the pivot points here, or I'm going to try to explain this as well as I possibly can. So, when you set up your steering angles, or your steering rack, you're going to want to try, first you want this to be centered. So turn your steering rack back and forth, lock to lock, count the turns, make sure everything is centered up before you start making any other adjustments. Now, if you can get away with it, or you want this pivot point here to line up with the pivot points of your control arms. Now you can see on this new rack, mine does not. It's roughly 3/4 of an inch in, which is still okay. Another thing you want to try to do when you do it is have your tie rods in line with your control arm. Basically, since this turning arm or this steering arm is on the high side of the knuckle, you want this to be somewhat level with your upper control arm. Now, if this steering arm was on the bottom, you'd want it to be somewhat level with the bottom. If And that all goes with this pivot point being in line with these. Now, since mine is not, it's 3/4 of an inch in, that is okay. I also couldn't get it to line up with the upper because with the suspension at full droop, it put too much bind on the tie rod. So I kind of had to split the difference in between both control arms. And when you go to set stuff up like this yourself, you're going to run into little issues, and you're going to find that you can split the difference. You can go a little high. You might bind, but depending on where your shock's at, might not let the suspension go down that far. So that's another thing to keep in mind, is your ride height and how far your shocks will let you travel in either direction. I will tell you, on my last steering rack, I had 0 bump steer. This one, I had to play with the positioning a little bit and kind of redo the mounts. But I now have, I mean, you can barely tell. As a matter of fact, let me give you to my wife here real quick, and I'm gonna have her video the wheel so you can see just how much bump steer we actually have. So now, if you can pay attention to the wheel here, you'll see it just slightly move. I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but it does have a very slight bump steer. Now this side is with the suspension all the way down. The shocks will not let it go that far. If you come over to this side where I have it sit on a 4x4, and I've measured, this is about the length of my shock, so that's how far down it will let this tire travel. And about right there is full extension. So it almost has, you can almost tell it has almost 0. Just very, very little. So which is fine. I can definitely live with that. Thank you, Ashley.
You're welcome.
So I can live with the amount of bump steer it has. It's very, very little. You almost barely see it. But when you're setting up your steering, you want to keep in mind where the inner tie rod pivots in relation to the pivot points on your control arms. Keep in mind where your steering arm is on the knuckle, because you want that tie rod to be parallel with that part of the knuckle. So if it's at the top or at the bottom, you want it parallel. Another thing you want to keep in mind as well is how straight on it is from your steering rack to your knuckle as well. Now you can use angle a little bit to help compensate for your bump steer or whatever. So you can slide it in or out to take away some of that angle, and that will help with bump steer. But when you do that, it'll start limiting your radius. So little things to keep in mind. Hope I didn't really overwhelm you too much with that. Now, I am going to end this video right here. I still got a little bit of cleanup before I weld that into place. But I think you guys have seen enough welding for me as of right now. And that this video is on the long side. So hopefully I didn't cram you with too much information. But hope you enjoyed. This buggy's getting really, really close. I'm just going to keep chugging along at it, keep putting it together, figure out what it is I need, but I'm happy, I'm getting excited the way everything's turning out. So, again, I'm just rambling on. I'm going to end this video right here. Thank you guys for hanging out. Hope you enjoyed. If you're new and you've made it this far, please hit that subscribe button for me. Leave a comment, ask questions, anything at all. So, again, thank you guys for hanging out. I'll catch you on the next one.